His last wish before the electric chair was to see his dog, but what happened next changed everything and revealed secrets no one was prepared to face. The sun had not yet risen when Thor, a majestic German shepherd, ran anxiously through the hallway of Isabella Martinez's apartment. His alert brown eyes fixed on the young journalist, who in the early hours of that morning would discover that her life was about to change drastically. Thor was no ordinary dog. He carried a device on his collar that could reveal the truth about one of Brazil's biggest corporate scandals. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. Tell us which city you're watching from, and let's continue. Caio Mendes, a brilliant data analyst at Inovatec Brazil, had been unjustly accused of leaking confidential information and now faced a trial that could result in decades of imprisonment. His only hope lay in the data hidden in Thor's collar, his loyal companion now under the care of Isabella, his best friend. Helena Castro, a lawyer known for her tenacity in complex cases, had just arrived at Isabella's apartment. Her heels echoed on the wooden floor as she approached the work table, where Isabella was trying to decipher the files found on the hidden USB drive. "We need to act fast," said Helena, her green eyes reflecting the light from the computer screen. "Caio's final hearing is in 3 days, and without this evidence we won't be able to turn things around." Isabella ran her hands through her curly hair, frustrated by the complexity of the encryption. "There's something strange here, Helena. The files seem incomplete, like they're only half of a larger puzzle." Thor, who had been attentively watching the two women, began to bark peculiarly upon hearing a series of beeps from the computer. His behavior caught Isabella's attention, as she was well aware of the special training Caio had given the dog. "He's trying to tell us something," murmured Isabella, remembering the stories Caio had told about the specific commands he had taught Thor. The dog wasn't just a pet. He was a trained guardian, programmed to respond to specific situations. Helena approached Thor, carefully examining the collar. "Look at this," she pointed to a nearly imperceptible inscription. "It looks like a code, or coordinates." At that moment, the computer emitted an alert. One of the files had been partially decoded, revealing fragments of a confidential Inovatec Brazil presentation. The information was enough to suggest a much larger conspiracy than a simple data leak. "My God," whispered Helena, her eyes quickly scanning the information on the screen. "This goes far beyond Caio. We're talking about a scheme involving some of the country's most powerful figures." Thor barked again, this time heading toward the door. His behavior was different, more urgent. Isabella recognized that look. It was the same one Caio had described when talking about Thor's special training. "He wants to show us something," said Isabella, already grabbing the leash. "Caio always said Thor was trained for emergency situations. Maybe he knows where to find the rest of the information." Helena checked her wristwatch, aware of the limited time they had. "We have less than 72 hours before the final hearing. If there's more evidence out there, we need to find it now." The two women exchanged determined glances. The night was just beginning, and they knew every minute was precious. Thor waited anxiously at the door as if he understood the gravity of the situation. "Let's follow Thor," decided Isabella, packing the laptop into her bag. "If there's one thing I've learned from living with Caio, it's that he never leaves anything to chance. If Thor is acting this way, there's a reason." Helena nodded, already typing a message on her phone. "I'll contact some trusted allies. We'll need all the support we can get in the coming hours." As they descended in the elevator, neither of them could imagine they were about to dive into a much more complex plot than it seemed. Thor, leading the way, seemed to be the only one who knew exactly where they were going. The night in São Paulo enveloped the three figures moving silently through the streets of the old industrial district. Thor guided the way with determination, occasionally stopping to sniff the air or check some mark invisible to human eyes. Isabella and Helena followed closely, their shadows elongated by the streetlights on the asphalt. "He seems to know exactly where he's going," whispered Helena, watching how Thor moved with purpose. The dog led them through several blocks until they stopped in front of an abandoned commercial building. The faded logo of Inovatec Brazil still adorned the facade. This was the company's old development office, explained Isabella, recognizing the place from Kaio's stories. He worked here for almost 2 years before being transferred to the new headquarters. Thor began scratching at a side door, his behavior more agitated than usual. Helena examined the lock carefully. It's locked, but it looks like someone's been here recently. Look at the marks in the dust. Isabella pulled a set of keys from her pocket. Kaio gave me these a few months ago, said I should keep them for an emergency. Among the keys was an old one, with distinct signs of wear. The lock clicked softly, and the door opened to reveal a dark hallway. The air was heavy with the smell of old paper and rusted metal. Thor advanced without hesitation, his light fur almost glowing in the darkness. Should we call for backup? Asked Helena, turning on her phone's flashlight. Not yet, replied Isabella. If there's something here, we need to find it first. We can't risk more people knowing about this place. Following Thor, they climbed to the 3rd floor. The dog led them directly to a room at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, they could see empty shelves and tables covered in dusty sheets. This was Kaio's office, said Isabella, recognizing the layout from the photos he had shown her. Thor went straight to a specific corner of the room, where a large metal filing cabinet leaned against the wall. Helena approached the cabinet, examining it closely. There's something strange here. This piece of furniture, it looks newer than the others. She ran her hand over the surface, revealing a small digital screen partially hidden by a layer of dust. A disguised safe, murmured Isabella, impressed by Kaio's ingenuity. But how do we open it? As if answering the question, Thor sat down and began barking in a specific pattern. With each bark, the digital screen flickered slightly. No way, said Helena, wide-eyed. The unlocking system responds to sound patterns? Kaio always said, Thor was special, replied Isabella, a smile forming on her lips. He developed security systems based on sound frequencies for Innovatech. It seems he created something similar here. Thor continued his barking pattern, and after a few seconds, a metallic click echoed through the room. The safe door opened slowly, revealing its contents. Inside was another electronic device, similar to the one found in Thor's collar but larger. There were also folders with documents and an old laptop. We need to take all of this, said Helena, already gathering the materials. Every minute here increases the risk of... Her sentence was interrupted by a sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Someone else was in the building. Thor immediately went on alert, his ears twitching toward the sound. Isabella quickly packed everything into her bag, while Helena turned off the flashlights. There's an emergency stairway through the window, whispered Isabella, remembering the details Kaio had shared about the building. We need to get out of here. Now. The footsteps grew closer, now accompanied by muffled voices. Thor positioned himself between the women and the door, his body tense, ready to protect them. Let's go, murmured Helena, carefully opening the window to avoid making noise. Thor, come. The dog obeyed silently, following them down the emergency stairs. As they descended, they could hear movement from the floor above. Whoever was there was also searching for something. At the Vale Seco Penitentiary Complex, Caio Mendes watched through the small window of his cell as night turned to day. His thoughts were with Thor, Isabella, and Helena, hoping they had managed to find the evidence needed to prove his innocence. The metallic sound of the cell bars opening interrupted his reflections. Mendes, pack your things, ordered a guard he had never seen before. The man wore the standard uniform of the complex, but something about his demeanor seemed out of place. What's the reason? Asked Caio, noticing the guard wasn't wearing the mandatory identification badge. Transfer. Orders from above? The man replied curtly, accompanied by two other unfamiliar guards. Caio gathered his few belongings, trying to stay calm while his mind worked to understand the situation. In 3 years of imprisonment, he had never seen a transfer carried out so early in the morning, much less without prior notice. He was escorted through unfamiliar corridors, descending elevators he didn't know existed in the complex. The environment gradually changed. The well-lit walls gave way to narrower, damp hallways with poor lighting. Where are we going? Asked Caio, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Maximum security wing," replied one of the guards, but something in his tone didn't sound truthful. They arrived at an area that seemed old and rarely used. The cells here were different, more isolated from each other. Caio was led into one of them, immediately noticing the absence of windows and the strong soundproofing. "Wait here until further notice," said the first guard, closing the heavy metal door. Alone in the cell, Caio began analyzing every detail of the environment. As a security systems expert, his trained eyes quickly identified hidden cameras in the corners, equipment far more sophisticated than what was used in the rest of the prison. In the hallway, he could hear fragments of whispered conversations among the guards. "We need to keep him isolated until direct orders from Innovatech. No one can have access." The mention of his former company confirmed his suspicions. This wasn't a normal transfer. Someone wanted to keep him completely isolated, likely because they were close to discovering something important. Meanwhile, in the warden's office, Roberto Almeida, the prison director, was confusedly reviewing the transfer documentation he had just received. The papers seemed official, with all the necessary stamps and signatures, but something didn't add up. "Sir," said his secretary, entering the office hurriedly, "Attorney Helena Castro is on the line. She has a court order to review the prison's security footage." The director frowned, looking again at the documents in his hands. A rushed transfer, a lawyer requesting access to the footage. Something very strange is going on here. In his new cell, Caio began noticing patterns in the routines of the guards watching him. They rotated in irregular shifts, unlike the prison's standard protocol. Moreover, their conversations always stopped when they approached his cell, as if they feared he might overhear something incriminating. During the night, when the silence was almost absolute, Caio could hear the distant sound of electronic equipment, something like servers or data processing systems. The sound was familiar to someone who had worked with technology for so long. "This isn't a standard maximum security area," he murmured to himself. "It looks more like a disguised operations center." His suspicions grew when he noticed that meals were brought by people different from the regular prison guards. These were individuals in civilian clothes who avoided any eye contact or communication. On the third day of his isolation, Caio received an unexpected visit. A man in a well-tailored suit, who identified himself only as a consultant, entered his cell. "Mr. Mendez," he began, his voice controlled and professional. "We're here to offer you a deal. Innovatech Brazil is willing to be generous if you sign a formal confession." Caio kept his expression neutral, even as his heart raced. If they were offering a deal, it meant Helena and Isabella must be close to uncovering something important. "And if I refuse?" asked Caio, carefully studying the man's reaction. The consultant smiled without humor. "Then we'll have to take other measures to protect the company's interests. You have until tomorrow to decide." Helena Castro was quickly scanning the monitors in the prison's security room, reviewing footage from the last 72 hours. Warden Roberto Almeida stood beside her, visibly uncomfortable with the situation. "These images don't make sense," said Helena, pointing to a specific sequence. "According to official records, this hallway leads to a deactivated maintenance area, but look at the constant flow of people." The warden stepped closer, adjusting his glasses to get a better look. "Impossible. That area has been off limits for years due to structural issues." "Then why are there people in business suits coming and going?" questioned Helena, pausing the video on a frame that clearly showed a group of men carrying briefcases and electronic equipment. At that moment, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Isabella. "We've recovered part of the files from the second device. You need to see this immediately." "Warden," Helena turned to Almeida, "I need access to that area now." "Attorney Castro, even with a court order, there are security protocols that—" "Protocols?" interrupted Helena. "Like the protocols that allowed a secret area to exist in a state prison, or the ones that authorized an irregular transfer of an inmate without proper documentation." The warden paled, sitting heavily in a nearby chair. "You don't understand. 2 weeks ago, I received direct orders from the governor's office. They said it was a matter of national security." "National security or corporate interests?" pressed Helena. showing documents recovered from the device found with Thor on her tablet. Inovatec Brazil is using public facilities for private operations. Warden, you're being used as a pawn in a much larger game. In Helena's office, Isabella was frantically working on recovering the damaged files. Thor remained by her side, more agitated than usual, as if sensing the urgency of the situation. "Look at this," murmured Isabella to herself, as more documents appeared on the screen. Secret projects, overpriced contracts, an entire network of political influence. Thor barked suddenly, drawing her attention to a specific folder that had just been decrypted. The file contained records of Inovatec Brazil's board meetings, including one scheduled for that very night at a mansion in Brasilia. "Helena," Isabella typed a quick message. "I found something big. The board meeting tonight, the governor will be there." Back at the prison, Helena confronted the warden with the new information. "You have two choices now. You can continue being complicit in a criminal scheme, or you can do the right thing." Almeida ran his hands over his face, visibly disturbed. "They threatened my family, Attorney Castro. They said if I didn't cooperate—" "We can protect your family," Helena assured him, "but I need access to Caio now, and I need you to give me all the information about who authorized this secret operation in the prison." The warden hesitated for a moment before opening a drawer and pulling out a manila envelope. "Here's everything I know: names, dates, meeting records, even details about a data processing center they installed in the underground area." "Data processing?" Helena frowned. "Why would a tech company need to hide servers in a prison?" "They're not just servers," Almeida explained, lowering his voice. "They're using the facility to process and store data that can't go through conventional channels. Information no one can trace." Helena began connecting the dots. Caio's isolation, the mysterious executives, the hidden servers. It was all part of a much more complex scheme than a simple data leak. "Warden," said Helena, placing the envelope in her briefcase, "I need you to do one more thing. I want all entry and exit records from that area for the past 6 months. And more importantly, I need a written authorization to visit Caio immediately." As Almeida drafted the authorization, Helena received another message from Isabella. "Meeting in Brasilia confirmed. At 8 p.m. I have a plan, but you're not going to like it." The sun was beginning to set in Brasilia as Helena Castro adjusted the badge of a third-party employee on her blazer. The forged document identified her as Maria Silva, an employee of the catering company hired for the event at the Albuquerque mansion, where Inovatec Brazil's secret board meeting would take place in less than 2 hours. "This is crazy," said Isabella through the small earpiece Helena was wearing. "If they find out who you are—" "They won't," replied Helena in a whisper, while arranging glasses on a tray. "Besides, this might be our only chance to get concrete evidence." The mansion was an imposing structure in Lago Sul, with reinforced security and cameras at every corner. Helena observed the guards' movements, memorizing their patrol patterns while pretending to arrange the tables. "The executives are starting to arrive," informed Isabella, who was monitoring everything from her van parked 2 blocks away. "The governor's car just passed the first checkpoint." Helena took a deep breath, mentally reviewing every detail of the plan. Her phone, specially modified, was programmed to automatically record any conversation within a 2-meter radius. The small camera hidden in her brooch would capture images of everyone present. "Helena!" Isabella's voice came urgently through the earpiece. "Something's wrong. I just intercepted a security transmission. They're doing additional checks on all stuff." "I can't back out now," replied Helena, discreetly moving to the 2nd floor where she knew the meeting would take place. "How long until they start the checks?" 15 minutes tops. Helena, you need to get out of there." But it was too late. The main doors closed with a soft click, and Helena could hear voices approaching down the hallway. Quickly, she slipped into a room adjacent to the meeting room, leaving the door slightly ajar. "The board won't like this," said a male voice. "It's already hard enough to control the Mendez situation. Now we have to deal with this meddling lawyer." "Attorney Castro is a problem that will be resolved soon," replied another voice, which Helena recognized as Ricardo Albuquerque, CEO of Inovatec. Our contacts in the judiciary have assured us her warrant will be revoked tomorrow. Helena felt her heart race. They were talking about her. What about the devices Mendez hid? We've located one, replied Albuquerque. The other must be with that dog of his. Our teams are searching the entire city for the animal. Thor. They were after Thor. Helena needed to warn Isabella. Are the servers at the prison secure? Asked a third voice, one Helena didn't recognize. Completely. No one suspects we're using state facilities to process data for Project Chimera. If anyone tries to trace the operations, it will all lead to government addresses. Helena recorded every word, her heart pounding harder. Project Chimera. This was the first time she had heard that name. Helena, Isabella's voice came again, through the earpiece. The guards are coming up. You have less than 2 minutes. At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. The staff verification had started earlier than expected. All rooms must be checked, ordered a deep voice. Helena looked around frantically. The room had no other exits besides the main door, and the window led to a 3-story drop. 1 minute, Isabella warned. The footsteps grew closer. Helena could see the shadows of the guards through the crack in the door. Helena, the ivy! Isabella suddenly exclaimed. There's strong ivy on the west wall. I can see it from here. Without time to hesitate, Helena quickly stashed her phone in an inner pocket of her blazer and rushed to the window. The ivy did indeed look robust, intertwined, with a decorative metal structure. The footsteps were now just outside the door. 30 seconds, Isabella whispered. Helena silently opened the window. The sun had completely set, providing the cover of darkness. With calculated movements, she began descending the ivy, praying the structure would hold her weight. The door to the room opened just as she was halfway down. Alarmed voices came from above, followed by the sound of radios being activated. As Helena made her daring escape down the mansion's ivy, Caio faced his own challenges in the underground cell. The constant hum of the servers had become his only companion until a new inmate was brought to the cell next to his. Psst, the man whispered through the wall. You're Mendez, right? The Innovatech guy. Caio hesitated, years of caution making him wary of any interaction. Who wants to know? My name is Fernando Oliveira. I was a developer on Project Chimera. The name of the project made Caio move closer to the wall. How can I trust you? Because I also discovered the truth about what they're doing with government data, and just like you, I tried to expose it. On the other side of the city, Isabella drove her van at high speed, with Helena now safely in the passenger seat. The two women processed the information obtained at the meeting. Project Chimera, Isabella repeated, typing the name into her laptop. As they waited at a traffic light, there's no official record of this project anywhere. Exactly, replied Helena, still catching her breath from the escape. They're using the prison's infrastructure to hide something big, something involving government data. Thor, in the back seat, began barking suddenly, drawing their attention. The device on his collar was flashing differently. Wait, said Isabella, connecting the device to her laptop. It seems to be reacting to the word Chimera. Caio must have programmed some kind of trigger into the system. On the computer screen, new files began to reveal themselves. They were fragments of code and documents that had been hidden in a deeper layer of the device. My God, Isabella murmured, her eyes scanning the screen. They created a parallel system. They're using the prison's infrastructure to process and store confidential data from various government agencies. For what? Asked Helena. To manipulate bids, contracts, judicial decision. They have access to everything. They can alter any document, create or delete records. Back in the cell, Caio continued his conversation with Fernando. Project Chimera wasn't supposed to be this, Fernando explained. At first, it was a legitimate data processing system to improve government efficiency, but then they realized they could use the system for other purposes, Caio finished. Exactly, and when I tried to alert the authorities, they made it look like I had hacked the system, just like your case. In the van, Isabella made an even more disturbing discovery in the files. Helena, look at this. The project has a target list, people they consider threats. She paused, swallowing hard. Your name is here. And there's a mark. Immediate action required. As if confirming the gravity of the situation, Thor began barking frantically, his eyes fixed on something through the van's window. "Isabella, behind us!" Helena shouted. Two black cars had just made a sharp turn, following the van closely. "They must have tracked the signal when we connected the device," said Isabella, speeding through the now nearly empty streets of São Paulo. "We need to get to Caio," said Helena, gripping the dashboard as Isabella took a sharp turn. "If he's locked up with that server system, he might be our only chance to prove all of this," Isabella completed. Thor barked again, this time pointing toward a side street. Years of living with Caio had taught Isabella to trust the dog's instincts. "Let's trust him," she decided, sharply turning the wheel to the right. The side street was narrow, barely allowing the van to pass. The pursuing cars were forced to follow in single file, losing their advantage of flanking. "What's that?" asked Helena, pointing to a building ahead. "The old Innovatech data center," replied Isabella, a smile forming on her lips. "And I still have the keys Caio gave me." The old Innovatech data center stood like a silent fortress in the São Paulo night. Isabella maneuvered the van to the back of the building, while Helena watched through the rearview mirror as the pursuing cars disappeared in the wrong direction. "We have to be quick," said Isabella, grabbing her laptop and a set of equipment. "They won't take long to realize we went another way." Thor followed the two women to a discreet service door. Caio's keys worked once again, allowing them to enter the seemingly abandoned building. "Why did we come here?" asked Helena as they followed Thor through the dark hallway. "Because this place," replied Isabella, turning on some lights through an old panel, "is where Project Chimera began. Caio told me about it once, said it was special." The interior of the data center revealed an impressive structure, rows and rows of old servers, most covered in dusty tarps. The sound of the still-functioning ventilation system echoed through the space. "Look at this," said Helena, removing one of the tarps. "This equipment looks perfectly preserved, as if someone's been keeping it running." Thor barked, drawing their attention to a specific area. His device began flashing more intensely. "It's here," murmured Isabella, connecting her laptop to one of the servers. "This must be the original Project Chimera server." On the computer, screen lines of code began to appear rapidly. Isabella typed commands frantically, her eyes fixed on the data emerging. "Incredible," she said. "The original system is still here. All the versions, all the records. Even... What is it?" asked Helena, noticing the change in her friend's expression. "I found emails, hundreds of them, exchanged between Innovatech's board and various authorities. They didn't just corrupt the project, they planned it from the start." At the prison, Caio continued his conversation with Fernando through the wall. "The old data center," said Fernando. "You left backups there, didn't you?" "I left more than that," replied Caio. "I left an entire monitoring system. Every time they access Project Chimera, every change they make, it's all duplicated and recorded. That's why they're so desperate to keep you here. You can prove everything." Back at the data center, Isabella made a surprising discovery. "Helena, the system is active right now. I can see in real time what's happening on the prison servers. Can you locate exactly where Caio is being held?" "Better than that," replied Isabella, a smile forming on her face. "I can see all communications, even..." She paused, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "I just intercepted a transfer order. They plan to move Caio early tomorrow to a facility outside the country." Thor began barking again, this time more urgently. The sound of engines could be heard outside. "They found us," said Helena, rushing to a window. 3 cars, at least 12 men." "It doesn't matter," replied Isabella, still typing. "I already have everything we need, and more." She pressed enter with a triumphant smile. "I just sent copies of all the evidence to 5 different servers in 5 countries. Even if they catch us now, they can't suppress the case anymore." A loud noise came from the main entrance. They were trying to break down the doors. "Is there another way out?" asked Helena, frantically searching for an escape route. "There is," replied Isabella. And that's why Kaio chose this place. Help me move that shelf. Behind the shelf was a discreet door leading to a maintenance tunnel. Thor was already positioned at the entrance, as if he knew exactly where to go. This tunnel connects all the main data centers in the city, explained Isabella as they entered. It was used for fiber optic cable maintenance. Kaio showed me the maps once, said I might need them someday. As they closed the door behind them, they could hear the voices of their pursuers invading the building. But now they had something, much more important than their own safety. They had the evidence needed to expose the entire truth. The meeting room at Inovatec Brazil was buzzing with tension that morning. Ricardo Albuquerque, the company's CEO, faced the executives hastily gathered after the first headlines began circulating in the media. "How did this happen?" he thundered, throwing several newspapers onto the table. The headlines were devastating. Scandal at Inovatec. Company used prison as illegal data center. Project Chimera, the system that manipulated government data. "Sir," began one of the directors, "we've already initiated damage control protocols. Our legal department is—" "Damage control," interrupted Albuquerque. "You don't understand the gravity of the situation. Helena Castro and that journalist didn't just get evidence, they created backups on international servers." At the newsroom of the country's largest newspaper, Isabella coordinated a team of investigative journalists, methodically distributing the evidence. "Every document needs to be verified 3 times, she instructed. "We can't leave any room for challenges." Thor rested by her side, still wearing the collar with the device, now considered crucial evidence. Reporters from across the country crowded the newsroom, trying to get exclusives on the coverage. In Helena's office, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Politicians, businessmen, and authorities desperately tried to find out how much she knew and what she planned to do with the information. "No, Governor," she said firmly over the phone. "There's no possibility of a deal. You knew about the illegal use of the prison and did nothing to stop it." Her computer beeped with a new message. More documents being leaked, this time showing the international extent of the scheme. Project Chimera wasn't limited to Brazil. At the prison, Warden Roberto Almeida faced a surprise inspection from the Internal Affairs Bureau. The discoveries about the secret server area had triggered a federal investigation. "All staff will be interviewed," informed the chief inspector. "We want to know who authorized the installation of this equipment and how it went unnoticed for so long." Kaio, still in his underground cell, sensed the change in the atmosphere. The special guards watching him were agitated, exchanging nervous glances and whispering. "It's happening," commented Fernando from the next cell. "They're losing control of the situation." "Helena and Isabella succeeded," replied Kaio, a smile forming on his face. "They found the backup at the old data center." At Inovatec's headquarters, the situation was rapidly deteriorating. Employees left the building carrying boxes of their belongings, while federal agents entered with search and seizure warrants. "Sir," Albuquerque's secretary called through the intercom, "the board representatives are demanding an emergency video conference." The CEO watched from his office window as chaos unfolded. 20 years building an empire, and now it all threatened to collapse because of a data analyst and his dog. In a discreet cafe downtown, Helena met with an anonymous informant from the company's upper echelons. "It's not just Project Chimera," the man revealed nervously. "There are other systems, other operations. What you've discovered is just the tip of the iceberg." "Go on," Helena encouraged, discreetly recording the conversation. "Inovatec has similar systems in at least 5 other countries. They call it Hydra Protocol. If one system falls, 2 others take over its functions." Isabella, who had just arrived, joined the conversation. That's why they were so desperate to stop Kaio from talking. He didn't just uncover a local scheme, but an entire international operation. Thor, ever alert, watched the cafe's movements attentively. His device continued collecting data, automatically connecting to the secure servers Kaio had prepared. "We need to act fast," said Helena, checking her phone. "I just got word. They're trying to transfer all the data from the prison servers to an unknown location." "Leave it to me," replied Isabella, already opening her laptop. "I still have access to the monitoring system we found at the old data center. I can block any unauthorized transfers." The informant looked nervously around. You don't understand, it's not just about data. Innovatech has connections with very powerful people, people who won't just accept being exposed. The tension at the Federal Police headquarters in Brasilia was palpable as Helena presented the collected evidence to a specially designated task force. Projected on the wall, a complex network of connections showed how Project Chimera branched into different spheres of power. The system didn't just process government data, Helena explained, pointing to a diagram. It created a parallel information network that allowed Innovatech to manipulate decisions at various levels. In the room, authorities from different agencies followed the presentation with increasingly concerned expressions. Project Chimera had infiltrated the system much more deeply than anyone could have imagined. Meanwhile, at the newspaper's headquarters, Isabella coordinated an international team of journalists. Through video conference, reporters from different countries shared discoveries about the scheme's ramifications. "The patterns are identical," explained an Argentine journalist. "We found evidence of similar systems in Buenos Aires, also hidden in government facilities." Thor, who never left Isabella's side, began barking suddenly. His device had detected an attempted breach of the secure servers. "They're trying to hack the system," Isabella alerted, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Someone's trying to access the international backups." At the prison, Caio noticed unusual activity. The special guards watching him began hastily removing equipment from the server area. "They're trying to destroy evidence," whispered Fernando from the next cell. "I can hear the sound of hard drives being formatted." "It won't help," replied Caio, a confident smile on his face. "The system I created doesn't just back up data. It records every attempt at tampering, every deleted file, every modification. It's all logged on a distributed blockchain." At Innovatech's headquarters, Ricardo Albuquerque faced a stormy meeting with the company's international board. The screens showed tense faces of executives from different countries. "We need to contain this immediately," demanded one of the board members. "If the Hydra protocol is fully exposed—" "We've activated all our connections," interrupted Albuquerque, "but the situation is out of control. The lawyer and the journalist built a very sophisticated protection network." Back at the task force, Helena received an urgent call from her contact in the judiciary. "They just tried to push through an emergency measure to block all investigations," the contact informed. "They're citing national security concerns." "They're desperate," replied Helena, "but they can't stop the process anymore. Public opinion is already mobilized." In front of the Innovatech building, a crowd of protesters gathered. The hashtag Project Chimera dominated social media, with people across the country demanding answers. Isabella, who was following everything from her desk at the newsroom, received another bombshell from her contacts. "Helena," she called over the phone, "I just received documents showing they had plans to expand the system to other continents. They found similar servers being prepared in Asia and Europe." Thor barked again, more insistently this time. His device was flashing in a different pattern. "Wait," said Isabella, connecting the device to her computer. "There's something new here. It seems Caio's system detected strange activity. They're trying to transfer all the money from the company's international accounts." In the task force room, Helena received the same information. "We need to act now," she told the authorities present. "They're trying to escape with the resources before we can block them." One of the delegates was already on the phone, mobilizing international teams. Interpol was being activated to track the financial movements. At the prison, Caio heard the growing commotion in the corridors. Something big was about to happen. He could feel it. His revenge was no longer just personal. It had become an international operation to expose one of the largest data manipulation schemes in history. The governor's office was buzzing with tense energy that morning. Advisors rushed in and out, while he stared at the latest news on his tablet. The exposure of Project Chimera had triggered an unprecedented crisis. "Sir," his secretary interrupted. "His thoughts? Attorney Helena Castro is here. She says she has information you need to see personally." The governor adjusted his tie, trying to maintain his composure. "Send her in." Helena entered the room with firm steps, carrying a briefcase and her ever-present tablet. Her face showed the determination of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Governor," she began, "I'm here to give you a chance to do the right thing." "Attorney Castro, if this is about Mr. Mendez, it's about much more than that." Helena interrupted, opening her tablet. "Did you know Innovatech wasn't just using the state prison, but also other government facilities?" On the other side of the city, Isabella was conducting a live broadcast from the newsroom. Thousands of people watched as she revealed new details about the scheme. Project Chimera wasn't just a data processing system, she explained to the cameras. It was a tool for social and economic control that infiltrated all levels of power. Thor, always by her side, kept his eyes on the monitors displaying social media reactions. His device continued collecting and processing data in real time. At the prison, intense activity began to form. Federal police vehicles crossed the main gates, while special agents headed to the underground area where Caio was being held. "It's happening," Fernando said through the wall. "They're here." Caio stood up, adjusting his clothes. "Yes, it's finally ending." Back in the governor's office, Helena presented irrefutable evidence. "You have two options," she explained, showing documents on her tablet. "You can continue denying involvement and be dragged down when everything comes to light, or you can cooperate and help dismantle this scheme." The governor ran his hands over his face, visibly shaken. "They have a lot on me, Attorney Castro. Information that could destroy not just my career. And you think that information won't come out anyway?" Helena questioned. "The difference is, which side do you want to be on when it happens?" At the newsroom, Isabella received an urgent message on her computer. Thor's device had detected suspicious activity. "They're trying to access the Hydra protocol," she exclaimed, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "They're trying to activate the backup systems in other countries," Thor barked insistently, his device flashing in a different pattern. On the computer screen, lines of code began to appear rapidly. "Incredible," Isabella murmured. "The protection system Caio created is adapting automatically, blocking each access attempt." At Innovatech's headquarters, chaos was unfolding. Employees ran from one side to the other, while Ricardo Albuquerque tried to maintain control of the situation. "We need to activate the emergency protocol," he shouted into the phone. "If we can't activate the backup systems..." His sentence was interrupted by the arrival of federal agents. With warrants in hand, they began sealing offices and seizing computers. In the task force room, information was coming in real time. Simultaneous operations were taking place in different countries, dismantling the international network of Project Chimera. "It's bigger than we imagined," commented one of the delegates, observing the incoming reports. They had connections at practically all levels of government. Helena, still in the governor's office, received constant updates on her phone. The net was closing in, and the main players were beginning to realize there was no way out. "So, Governor," she asked, watching the man who now seemed much smaller in his imposing chair, "what will your decision be?" The governor looked out the window of his office, observing the city stretching to the horizon. Years of shady deals and dubious compromises passed through his mind. The silence in the governor's office was deafening. Helena waited patiently while the most powerful man in the state contemplated his decision. Outside, the buzz of the press was already building, with dozens of reporters speculating about the extraordinary meeting. "How much time do I have?" the governor finally asked, his voice heavy with resignation. "Enough to do the right thing," replied Helena, already sorting through the necessary documents. "But we need to act now." Meanwhile, at the newsroom, Isabella received a live feed from the prison's security cameras, hacked through Caio's system. The images showed federal agents entering the underground area, escorting technology experts. "The servers are being isolated," she narrated to thousands of online viewers. "Every byte of information is being preserved as evidence." Thor, ever vigilant, began barking differently. His device was picking up a new data frequency. "Wait," said Isabella, quickly connecting the device to her computer. "Something's happening. It looks like someone is trying to access the system from inside the prison." In the prison's underground area, Caio watched through the small window of his cell as technicians and agents worked on the servers. A discreet smile formed on his face as he saw the desperate attempts of some Innovatech employees. "They don't understand," he murmured to Fernando. "The system was designed for this. Every hacking attempt just reveals more evidence." In the governor's office, the decision was finally made. "I'll cooperate," he declared, picking up a pen, "but I need guarantees that my family will be protected." "I've already arranged that," replied Helena, handing him an official document from the Witness Protection Program. "Your family will be kept safe throughout the process." At Innovatech's headquarters, Ricardo Albuquerque faced his own crisis. Sitting in his office, now surrounded by federal agents, he watched helplessly as his empire crumbled. "Sir," his secretary called for the last time, "the International Board is demanding an explanation. And there's one more thing. The device on the dog, it just unlocked a new layer of information." Thor, in the newsroom, seemed to know exactly what was happening. His device now emitted a completely new pattern of lights, revealing data even Caio hadn't anticipated. "My God," Isabella whispered, analyzing the new information. It wasn't just Brazil. They had plans to implement this globally. Project Chimera was just the test phase. Back in the governor's office, Helena received real-time updates through encrypted messages. "Governor," she said, showing the latest findings, "you made the right choice. This is much bigger than we imagined." The governor, now visibly shaken, began revealing details even Helena hadn't expected. Project Chimera had an international board, he explained. Powerful people, not just businessmen, but political leaders from various countries. They called it the New Order. At the newsroom, Isabella coordinated an international team of journalists who were beginning to connect the dots globally. What had started as an investigation into an injustice against Caio was turning into the exposure of a worldwide conspiracy. Thor continued processing data, his device now connected to an international network of secure servers. Each new piece of information revealed increased the scale of the scandal. "Helena," Isabella called over the phone, "we need to act fast. I just received information that some members of the International Board are trying to leave their countries. We need to alert the authorities." The governor, hearing the conversation, stood up decisively. "I have the contacts," he said. "I can help stop them from fleeing, but we need to act now." The Special Operations Command Center of the Federal Police was buzzing with activity. On huge screens, world maps showed blinking red dots, each representing a location where Project Chimera had infiltrated. "We have confirmation," announced one of the coordinators. "Authorities in 12 countries have already initiated simultaneous operations. The servers are being isolated and preserved." Helena observed the movement while coordinating with Isabella via video call. On the split screen, she could see the newsroom, where dozens of journalists worked frantically to process the constant flow of new information. "The governor is cooperating beyond expectations," Helena informed. "He just provided access to a private server containing records of all the international board meetings." Thor, beside Isabella, kept his eyes fixed on the monitors. His device now functioned as a kind of detector, alerting to any attempt to interfere with the systems. "Helena, look at this," Isabella called, sharing her screen. "We just decrypted a new folder of files, their plans for implementing what they called the Omega phase of the project." At the prison, Caio received a visit from a special group of investigators. His experience with the system was crucial to fully understanding its structure. Project Chimera was developed in layers, he explained, drawing a diagram. Each seemingly legitimate layer hid other functionalities. The true purpose was to create a global control network. At Innovatech's headquarters, now under federal intervention, technology experts were discovering more evidence every minute. "We found it," shouted one of the technicians. "The main server room. It's all here. Records of every operation, every manipulation, every unauthorized access to government data." Ricardo Albuquerque, watching everything from his now guarded office, received call after call from members of the International Board. "I can't do anything," he repeated, his voice defeated. "The protection system Mendez created, he anticipated everything. Every attempt we make to erase traces only exposes more evidence. At the newsroom, Isabella coordinated the synchronized publication of the revelations in media outlets worldwide. It was an unprecedented journalistic operation. People need to understand the scale of this, she explained to her team. It's not just about corruption or data manipulation. It's about a systematic attempt at social control on a global scale. Thor barked suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. His device was flashing in a never-before-seen pattern. "What is it, boy?" asked Isabella, quickly connecting the device to her computer. On the screen, a new series of files began to reveal themselves. They were records of a secret meeting held just a week before, where the International Board discussed plans for a possible contingency. "Helena," Isabella called urgently. "They have a backup plan, something called Phoenix Protocol. They're trying to transfer the entire system to quantum servers in an unknown location." At the command center, Helena quickly mobilized the teams. "We need to track those transfers," she ordered. "If they manage to reactivate the system elsewhere, they won't succeed," interrupted a voice. It was Fernando, the former project developer, now collaborating with the investigations. "The system Caio created doesn't just monitor, it learns and adapts. Every transfer attempt is being automatically blocked." Suddenly, all the screens in the command center blinked simultaneously. On the main monitor, a message began to form. "Final protocol activated, full exposure initiated." "It's Caio's system," Fernando explained, a smile forming on his face. "He programmed this as a last resort. If they tried an unauthorized transfer, the system would automatically release all the data to pre-selected authorities worldwide." At the newsroom, Thor barked excitedly as his device processed and transmitted data at maximum speed. It was the beginning of the end for Project Chimera. In the main room of the Supreme Federal Court, the silence was absolute, as the reporting justice prepared to announce his decision. Helena sat in the front row, next to Isabella. Thor, with special permission to be present, maintained his vigilant posture. "Given the evidence presented," began the justice, his voice echoing through the chamber, "this court cannot ignore the gravity and extent of the actions perpetrated by Inovatec Brazil and its collaborators." On the screens scattered throughout, the court graphs and diagrams showed the complex network of Project Chimera, now completely exposed. Every connection, every manipulation, every attempt at control was meticulously documented. "The developed system," continued the justice, "not only violated basic principles of privacy and national security, but represented a coordinated attempt to subvert the very foundations of the democratic rule of law." At the prison, Caio watched the live broadcast alongside Fernando. After years of struggle, the truth was finally coming to light in an irrefutable way. "Gentlemen," the justice went on, "what we have before us is not just a case of corruption or data manipulation. It is a systematic attempt at social and economic control that could have devastating consequences for global society." At Inovatec's headquarters, now under intervention, the employees watched in astonishment as their world crumbled. Ricardo Albuquerque in his office was surrounded by federal agents as the justice continued his exposition. "This court determines with immediate effect the complete dissolution of Inovatec Brazil and all its subsidiaries. All company assets will be blocked and reverted to a compensation fund for the victims of its actions." Thor, sitting beside Isabella, kept his eyes fixed on the screens. His device continued processing data, ensuring no information was lost or manipulated. "As for Mr. Caio Mendes," announced the justice, prompting an even deeper silence in the room, "this court recognizes not only his innocence, but also his fundamental role in exposing and dismantling this criminal scheme." Isabella squeezed Helena's hand, tears of joy streaming down her face. Years of struggle culminated in this moment of justice. "Furthermore," continued the justice, "I determined the creation of a special international commission to investigate the ramifications of Project Chimera in other countries. The coordination of this commission will be led by attorney Helena Castro, who demonstrated exceptional competence and courage in conducting this case." At the newsroom, Isabella's team worked frantically to cover every aspect of the historic decision. Journalists from around the world followed the broadcast, recognizing the magnitude of the moment. "Finally," declared the justice, "this court recommends a complete review of digital security systems in all government instances. The Project Chimera case has shown us how technology can be used both to protect and to subvert democracy." Thor barked softly, as if understanding the importance of the moment. His device emitted a final set of data, completing the historical record of the case. "From today," concluded the justice, "we establish a global precedent in the fight against digital manipulation and corporate abuse of power. May this case serve as a reminder that the truth, no matter how suppressed, will always find its way to the light." Helena looked at Isabella and smiled. The path had been long and difficult, but they had finally succeeded. Justice, though delayed, was being served. As they left the court, a crowd of reporters awaited. Thor walked proudly beside Isabella and Helena, his device still flashing occasionally, a constant reminder that the vigilance for truth must never cease. A week after the historic decision of the Supreme Federal Court, Kaio finally walked through the gates of the Vale Seco Penitentiary Complex as a free man. The morning sun illuminated his face as he walked toward a small group eagerly waiting for him. Thor was the first to react, running toward him with an energy that made everyone smile. The German Shepherd jumped on Kaio, his tail wagging furiously, as he licked his owner's face after such a long absence. "Hey, buddy," said Kaio, his voice choked with emotion as he hugged his loyal companion. "You did an amazing job." Isabella and Helena approached, both with tears in their eyes. The moment they had fought so hard for had finally arrived. "Welcome back," said Isabella, hugging her friend. "We have so much to tell you." In the temporary office of the Special Commission, set up in a federal building in Brasilia, dozens of international investigators worked tirelessly. On the walls, digital maps showed the locations where branches of Project Chimera continued to be discovered. "It's impressive," commented an Interpol investigator, analyzing the data. "The system you created to monitor and expose the scheme, there's revolutionary, Kaio. We could use it to prevent similar situations in the future." Kaio, now a special consultant to the Commission, explained the technical details of his creation. "The important thing is that it's used to protect, not to control. That's why I included ethical protocols in the base code." In her new office, at the newsroom, Isabella coordinated an international team of investigative journalists. The Project Chimera case had become a turning point for digital journalism. "Every day we discover new connections," she explained during a video conference. "But now we have the tools and the collaboration network to expose any similar attempts." Thor, who now divided his time between Kaio and Isabella, continued with his special device. Several research centers had expressed interest in studying the unique technology developed by Kaio. "The device isn't just a security system," Kaio explained during a lecture. "It's a digital guardian programmed to protect truth and transparency." Helena, in turn, led the International Commission with renewed determination. Her law firm had become a reference center for digital crime and data protection cases. What happened with Project Chimera showed us that we need a new approach to digital security, she declared at an international conference, one that puts human rights and privacy first. On a quiet afternoon, the three friends gathered at Isabella's apartment, the same place where the entire investigation had begun. Thor rested near the window, his device flashing softly. "Sometimes it's still hard to believe we succeeded," commented Isabella, serving coffee for everyone. "It wasn't just us," replied Kaio, petting Thor. "It was a combination of technology, investigative journalism, and justice working in harmony." "And now?" asked Helena, looking out at the city through the window. "What comes next?" Kaio smiled, picking up his laptop. "I was thinking of something, a global protection system against digital abuses, something that any person or organization can use to defend themselves." "Like a digital Thor for everyone?" joked Isabella. "More or less," replied Kaio. "A universal guardian of truth and transparency." Thor barked as if approving the idea, making everyone laugh. His device flashed in a different way, almost as if it were eager to participate in the new project. What happened changed much more than our lives, reflected Helena. It changed how the world sees digital security and corporate power. Kaio's laptop, the first lines of code for the new system were already taking shape. It was the beginning of a new era in the fight for truth and digital transparency. 6 months after the fall of Project Chimera, the auditorium of the University of São Paulo was packed for the inauguration of the International Center for Digital Protection. On stage, Caio, Helena, and Isabella prepared to present the new initiative that promised to revolutionize how data and digital rights would be protected globally. Thor, wearing a new collar with an even more advanced device, sat near the stage, attentively watching the crowd that had gathered. Journalists, researchers, and digital activists from around the world had come for the event. "Welcome," began Caio, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "A year ago, we were fighting against a system that threatened the very essence of democracy. Today, we're here to ensure that never happens again." In the front row, Fernando smiled, now the technical director of the new center. His experience with Project Chimera had become a valuable tool for preventing similar abuses. "The center won't just be a research institute," explained Helena, taking the microphone. "It will be a global support point for any person or organization that needs to defend itself against digital manipulation and abuse of power." On the large screens behind them, graphics showed how the new protection system would work. It was an evolution of the program Caio had originally created, now expanded and refined with contributions from experts worldwide. "Transparency will be our main weapon," continued Isabella, presenting the journalistic division of the center. "We've created an international network of investigative journalists, all trained in cutting-edge technologies to detect and expose attempts at digital manipulation." Thor barked softly, his device flashing in sync with the presentations on the screen. The system that had once helped dismantle Project Chimera now served as the foundation for a much more comprehensive technology. "But the true heart of the center," Caio resumed, "will be the Digital Guardians program, a decentralized open-source system that will allow any citizen to monitor and protect their own data." In the audience, representatives from governments and international organizations took furious notes. The potential of the project was evident, a revolution in how society dealt with digital security and transparency. "And to ensure the system is never corrupted," added Helena. "We've created an international ethics board composed of experts in human rights, technology, and digital legislation." Isabella advanced the presentation, showing the first results of the pilot projects. In just 3 months of testing, the system has already identified and prevented dozens of data manipulation attempts in different countries. Thor stood up, walking to Caio on the stage. His device now served as a living prototype of what the system could do, a tireless guardian of truth and transparency. "But perhaps the most important aspect of the center," Caio concluded, petting Thor, "is its commitment to education. It's not enough to have the tools, we need to teach people how to use them." In the audience, young students of technology and journalism watched fascinated. They would be the next generation of digital guardians, trained to protect the truth in an increasingly connected world. "What happened with Project Chimera taught us a valuable lesson," reflected Helena. "Technology is like any tool. It can be used to build or destroy. It's up to us to ensure it's used for good." At the end of the presentation, as the audience gave a standing ovation, the 3 friends gathered at the center of the stage. Thor sat between them, his device glowing as a symbol of hope for the future. "This is just the beginning," Isabella whispered to her friends. "We have a lot of work ahead." "Yes," agreed Caio, looking at the enthusiastic crowd, "but now we're no longer alone in this fight." Thor barked once, as if sealing the moment. The legacy of Project Chimera would not be the fear and manipulation its creators intended, but rather a global revolution in the fight for truth and digital transparency. 1 year after the inauguration of the International Center for Digital Protection, Caio watched the sunset from his new office on the top floor of the building. Thor rested near the window, his device now part of a global protection network that had become a worldwide reference in digital security. "Still thinking about tomorrow's speech?" asked Isabella, entering the room with a folder of documents. The First World Congress of Digital Guardians would begin the next day, bringing together representatives from over 100 countries. "Actually, I was thinking about how it all started," replied Kaio, smiling at Thor. With a flash drive hidden in a collar, Helena arrived shortly after, bringing the latest updates from the International Protection Network. "You won't believe this month's numbers. The system has already prevented over 1,000 attempts at government data manipulation worldwide." Thor lifted his head, his device flashing in recognition. The system Kaio had originally created had evolved into something far beyond his initial expectations. "The results of the first class of Digital Guardians are out," commented Isabella, showing her tablet. 5,000 young people graduated, ready to work in their home countries. The training program had become an international success, with branches in dozens of universities around the world. Each new Digital Guardian was equipped with an adapted version of Thor's original system. "And Fernando?" asked Kaio, noticing his friend's absence. "He's in Switzerland," replied Helena. "The UN just approved the resolution he helped draft. Now we have an international legal framework for data protection and combating digital manipulation." On the main screen in the room, a world map showed glowing dots representing each active Digital Guardian. It was a living network of protection, constantly growing and adapting. "Sometimes I wonder," said Isabella, sitting near Thor, "if those Innovatech executives had any idea what they were really creating when they tried to stop us." "They wanted control," replied Kaio, "but they ended up catalyzing a revolution for transparency and digital freedom." Thor barked softly as if in agreement. His device, now much more advanced than the original, continued to serve as the prototype for each new generation of protection technology. "I received an interesting message today," commented Helena. "The governor, after completing his cooperation with the justice system, is writing a book about how the political system can be reformed to prevent digital manipulation." "And Ricardo Albuquerque?" asked Isabella. "After serving his alternative sentence, he's giving lectures on business ethics and the dangers of unchecked corporate power," replied Helena. "Ironic, isn't it?" The sun finished setting over the São Paulo skyline, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. At the center, the lights began to turn on automatically, creating a welcoming atmosphere. "Tomorrow will be a big day," said Kaio, standing up from his chair. "The first global meeting of Digital Guardians. Who would have thought we'd come this far?" Thor approached his owner, the device on his collar glowing softly. It was the same glow that had guided Isabella and Helena on that crucial night so long ago. "It wasn't just our victory," reflected Helena. "It was a victory for truth, justice, and the human capacity to turn adversity into progress." "And this is just the beginning," added Isabella, petting Thor. "Every new Digital Guardian we train is a guarantee that history won't repeat itself." The three friends gathered near the window, watching the city lights come on under the night, a sky. Thor sat between them, his device flashing in a pattern that seemed to reflect the lights of the metropolis. "To a new dawn," said Kaio, smiling at his friends. "To a new dawn," Helena and Isabella repeated in unison. Thor barked one last time as if sealing the moment. His legacy, like that of his human companions, would live on through every new Digital Guardian, protecting truth and freedom in the digital world. Dear listeners, we hope the journey of Kaio, Helena, Isabella, and the faithful Thor has touched your hearts. This story shows us that truth, even when threatened, finds its guardians. To continue following inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. Leave your like and share your thoughts in the comments. Together, we are all guardians of stories that deserve to be told.